Hello and welcome to Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have a midweek recap of Portland versus North Carolina Courage and a weekend preview of NWSL matches coming up. So we've got a lot to get through today. A quick reminder, if you're joining us live, you can watch all of our episodes and exclusive interviews on YouTube. You can subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live. Hit subscribe at youtube.com/attacking third. Let's do it one more time. Lisa, what's going on? How you doing today?
Oh, I'm so good. Prepping for a very busy weekend, as always it is in the NWSL. I know we've had like meetings on our calendar today, but it's good that we can go live, join the people on YouTube, say hey, join us in the chat. It's great to chat with you all. I'm good. I mean, we had midweek action that was truly thrilling, so I'm excited to talk about that. We've gotten a little bit more clarity on some of the news we reported earlier in the week, so a lot of things to kind of chat about and break down. Watching some WNBA last night after the NWSL matches as well, which I know you're super tuned into. How are you, buddy?
I'm hyped. Chicago Sky going to face Connecticut Sun, as we now know, repeat of last year's semifinal. So I'm hyped to partake in a little bit of that. Some season ticket holders. So exciting
I've got to admit here, I have just a bit of bias. There's no WNBA team in Philly.
I respect it.
I have to pick up my teams wherever I can. And
I get it.
Natia Heidemann plays for the Connecticut Sun. She's a Marquette gal. I know her from my days there. We crossed over, I think, 2 or 3 years.
I love that.
When I was a senior, I started interning for Marquette Athletics to do interviews and stuff like that. So I got to chat with her a lot. I mean, I knew her very well. So she's on a roll right now.
I love that. That's how you do it. You got to make those connections, find that emotional attachment. There's nothing better than making sports this emotional thing. So we're excited about it.
Something there that's not actually there. So
exactly.
Go Connecticut Sun.
That's not it's something that people don't do ever when it comes to sports. But I mean, look, I'm over here talking about I'm getting really excited for the Chicago Sky. So that's how you do it, baby. But yeah, excited for WNBA playoffs to continue, and excited for us to continue recapping and previewing the NWSL regular season. It's not necessarily the playoffs yet, but it's getting real close. Plenty of teams already in the midst of their final third of the season, quite frankly. Others sort of just entering and stepping in to that right now. Let's start with that. We had midweek action this week. Just last night, North Carolina Courage hosting Portland Thorns FC. They pick up a second consecutive win. Is the unthinkable going to happen here? I don't know. Right. But it's something to got to celebrate the Dubs when you get in, and the Courage have 2 in a row now. But at what cost, Lisa? Because even though they won this game, they end up winning 3-1 against Portland Thorns Wednesday night. Goals from Diana Ordonez. She is level with Sophia Smith now in this Golden Boot race. It's Alex Morgan with 12 goals on the season, and now Diana Ordonez, the rookie, and Sophia Smith with 11 goals, getting the opening goal scoring here. And then you have Davinia getting a go-ahead goal early. Rocky Rodriguez trying to pull one back for the Thorns, with Meredith Smith putting this one on ice for the Courage. And we saw Ordonez have to come out of this one kind of early.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the lowest points of this game, is watching Diana Ordonez go down. Looks to be her shoulder is injured, which is very painful. It's incredibly painful to have your shoulder pop out of its socket. I don't know if that's what happened, but did not look great from that.
You speak about that as if you might have experience with it, Lisa. Have you had a shoulder injury before as a defender?
I have not had any shoulder surgery. So I'm very lucky and fortunate there. I'm going to knock on some wood as you know, Sandra, and maybe some of our listeners, I play soccer a couple times a week. I try to work out, try to do my pull-ups on occasion. And there are definitely days where I'm like, this is not a good day for my shoulder, but it's just painful. It's not great to happen. And ultimately they take her off the pitch, which I think is a super smart decision at this point. She's already scored her goal and she ends up being in a sling on the sidelines, but no stretcher, right? But also it's an upper body injury. Most times players can walk after that, no matter what happens. We were told in the post game from Sean Nahas, head coach of the Courage, that we would find out hopefully today. And at this point of this recording, we're going live right now in the afternoon, right before 3:00 Eastern. There's no word yet on Ordonez and kind of what can happen there. But we will find out. I wouldn't expect to see her play this weekend because both of these sides, Portland and North Carolina, back in action this weekend. Sandra, I'm sorry, but we just have to pause, rewind, go back, because you said at the beginning when you started talking about this game, we have to celebrate the little wins. And I would like to take a moment to celebrate my win of picking North Carolina to win this match over the Thorns, because I picked the Courage. I wanted them to go on a little bit of a streak and a run. And that's exactly what they did with this 3-goal win. I mean, and this was huge. I think the fans in Cary, North Carolina showed up at Wake Med. You could tell it was a home game for North Carolina, and that perhaps gave them the little lift that they needed. But Ordonez had a great game. And so this injury is pretty devastating, but we don't know the depths of it yet. But either way, to go down and have to come off is not always a positive thing. But her combination play with Caroline and Debinha is just fantastic. I think Brianna Pinto had a great game. I mean, Denise O'Sullivan has been putting in so much work defensively for this North Carolina side that in the midfield, she just does it so well. She does it so well for them, and really stopping Sophia Smith from getting on the board in this match, which I think was a pretty big deal for North Carolina. Even though Rocky Rodriguez does get one for Portland, the lone goal for the Thorns in this match. But a heck of a battle between these two sides. We knew it was going to be, and they're both back in action this weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yeah, I thought that this game was a little bit different compared to some of the midweek matches that we've witnessed over the course of the last couple months specifically. There was a moment where I was torn. I was like, do I want to actually, just for parity's sake, go the opposite side and go with Thorns, which I ultimately ended up doing, or do I maybe want to go with a draw? Because there have been moments where sometimes you sort of see a team coming off of a heavy match, it'll kind of hit a wall a little bit, sometimes a quick turnaround. We see that happen for both teams on the pitch, but I don't know if I necessarily think you had that feeling watching this match between the two teams. I thought that the Courage did a pretty good job of making sure that they took advantage of the fact that, the Thorns were coming off of that WICC tournament and, kind of stepping back into regular season, match play. And then you kind of saw with the starting 11 and then the adjustments that we saw, the player rotations that we saw from Coach Wilkinson for the Thorns, you kind of saw they're going to have to, take a look at their match week this week, knowing that they've got, midweek game and then there's things ahead in the future. So I was a little bit curious if perhaps we were going to continue to see the Courage just sort of go out there and get at it. And that's really what we saw in this game. I think really early on, sort of seeing, the continuation of this, it's special. I think what we're witnessing right now. I think regardless of where you're looking at a team's standing at this point in the season, you're looking at a team like the Courage and you're looking at their attack, and you have got to be as optimistic as ever, I think, for the season ahead of you. Quite frankly, I think, you're talking 25 minutes into this game, Ordonez continuing to just be this threat for the Courage in the back, no matter who is on the, assisting end of it, whether it's Carson Pickett, who had a great ball in, or somebody like, Debinha or Caroline or Caroline, continuing their chemistry, on the pitch together. So it's an exciting time, I think, regardless of the standings for this team. And I was curious if maybe we were going to be heading for a draw, because talking about players making an impact, having Rodriguez up into this match and just sort of trying to help the Thorns kind of take a little bit of control in the midfield there, to get one back and it just past the hour mark. I thought maybe there were the makings of a draw potentially in this one. Fantastic link up between her and Yasmin Ryan, who is continuing to have a really good second half of the season for the Thorns. But again, I think it really was about just sort of maybe a little bit of player adjustment or in-game adjustments, because we just sort of saw after that how Speck was able to kind of put things away for the Courage, and she was someone that subbed in as well. So big 3 points, I think, for the Courage, even if it's just for mentality's sake, right? Moving forward. And then, like you said, listening to Nahas in the post game, that a big part of Ordonez coming out was because of like maybe looking ahead a little bit, that they don't want to, she was taken out more out of, precautionary measures, not so much it was the staff that sort of made that decision for them. Naha saying in the post game that the doctors were going to leave it up to the players, and the coaching staff said, well, actually, we're not going to leave that up to the player. We're going to make sure that we just look ahead a little bit and say, no, that she's too young and she's too good to be kind of frivolous with that. So,
and she had already scored at that point. Like that's something really important to look at. 24th minute, she gets a goal, and about 10 minutes later in the 33rd minute is when she goes down and this substitute happens. So a player at that point is riled up. They're super confident. Yeah. They're like, no, I want to keep playing. I want to keep going. I think it's honestly the super smart decision and hindsight, right? 2020, but the Courage end up getting the win in this one, no matter what. So could Diana maybe had a brace in this game or made it 4-1 perhaps, but it doesn't matter. They picked up the 3 points. She has now 11 goals on the year. I think the rotation with Brittany Radcliffe coming in was a great substitute for Sean Neha. She provided a lot. I know you were talking about Yasmin Ryan and some of these underrated players, but they're not underrated. They just maybe don't get as much recognition because they're not picking up individual points on assists or goals for their team, but they're doing a lot of the dirty work. And Radcliffe is one that influenced definitely the third goal on this game. And even the second one a little bit on Dabinia. She just made these great runs. She was dragging the defenders away from other people. I mean, and that Dabinia goal, the second goal for North Carolina, it was such a beautiful, incredible shot. And then Abby Smith gets a great save for Portland. I mean, this game had a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And that's the other side of it too. We're talking about the goals, but shame on us because we say that we love defense and we love goalkeeping. But Abby Smith, like stepping in for Bella Bixby in this one, again, the head coach, the coaching staff, like making smart decisions for their players as the regular season kind of winds down. Wilkinson also saying like, hey, like Bixby was going to sit this one out, wasn't necessary for her to travel. Mm-hmm. Smith is more than capable, and we saw Smith, the scoreline doesn't reflect that, but came up with some massive saves in this one for Portland. So I'm curious to sort of see where these two teams go from this midweek match, as they both have some games, coming up into the weekend, which we will preview. But first, we want to talk about some news updates before we get into making our picks for this weekend's slate of games. The Washington Spirit give an update on the Kris Ward dismissal. Their club president, Mark Kikorian, stepping in to have a press conference addressing the media today on Thursday, and basically said that the dismissal ultimately came by way after a incident occurred at the training grounds. And ultimately, the Spirit have notified the NWSL and the NWSL Players Association. They went ahead and they met with their players. And according to Kikorian, said that it became apparent to me and to all that a change was necessary. So just sort of, it was not just the combination of, a losing record or perhaps, a lost locker room, that there was ultimately perhaps a straw that was the final straw. And there was this incident. There was no further details about that. And quite frankly, it sounds like the club's trying to be as transparent as they can be. I know the perception of that is that they are not, but if there are players involved in an incident, I think you have to try to be respectful of that at this moment. If players are not, willing to, sort of give additional details about that, I think that maybe that has to be respected. But within this, it was somewhat of a shorter press conference. There wasn't additional details in terms of, a next coach to be named or an interim. That is actually in the process. They have, mentioned that there are background checks that they are awaiting on, that this is something that they are trying to take their time with, of course. And Angela Salem is still in the meantime running practices and trainings for the team. And it's likely going to be on the sidelines for the Spirit when they take on Houston this weekend.
Yeah, I think something that you said is very important to reiterate with this situation. Of course, transparency and details are not only necessary to make things better moving forward and for the transparency for fans because a lot of them just want to know, which is fine. But there's always another side to a story and a situation. And I don't think that in this situation, the Washington Spirit is protecting Kris Ward. They may be protecting a player. And they took the necessary steps to tell the NWSL, to tell the NWSL Players Association, to report the incident, to remove the coach from the situation, and now report on it. Perhaps it's not the way fans would have liked to see it happen, but there's also a bit of a learning curve, right? A year ago at this point, things probably would have happened very differently, and things did happen differently in the NWSL. So we're already making those stepping points to move forward and to work on transparency and to have that level of transparency between the clubs, the coaches, the players, the fans, and the media. But there's not, you're not always going to find out everything, because sometimes it's not in the best interest of the player or maybe someone that was on the receiving end of this to reveal all of that. And that's their personal discretion.
So of course, if there's another update, like we'll chat about that and bring it to the show and discuss it. In the meantime, that's just what is, out there at the moment. And this was the firing, the termination was announced on a Monday. It's Thursday now where this press conference has taken place. And I have to imagine if the incident that they're referring to occurred on a Friday and then the dismissal came on a Monday, things are sort of happening in the process in which, as quickly I think as they can possibly happen. And if you're talking about from Friday to Thursday, nearly a week in between that, if the league and the NWSL Players Association has been notified of this, that they're also maybe trying to take the appropriate steps as they deem necessary. And I think, honestly, if we've learned nothing else from last year, I think a lot of folks out there, even neutrals or very invested fans of the league and the teams, if they learn nothing else from last year, it's that they maybe are trying to take their cues from the players. And I have to imagine that if nothing at this point has come out from the Players Association, that it's just one of those things where you just have to sort of continue to keep your eye on it as news continues to drop. And if there hasn't been an additional statement or even collaborative statement from league and the Players Association, you're just maybe unfortunately just gonna have to sort of deal with the information that's in front of you, and that's what there is right now.
I mean, that's kind of like the situation when you think back to James Clarkson, former Houston head coach. There's still been no update on that report. Same as Amanda Cromwell. So like the updates as they're available to the public will be made available to the public, and they're not at this point. So we move on. But I think it's important to note also that Mark Kerkorian was asked if he would be the coach, because he's a former NCAA coach. He won a lot of titles there. That was an option at this point for the Spirit, and his response, absolutely not. So it'll most likely be Angela Salem stepping into that role, which is honestly like a little crazy to think about, that she was playing a year ago. She retired a few months later, signed on to be an assistant coach, and then literally within 1 year of retiring, she's now acting head coach. I mean, I'm saying those words, they were not out there. Acting head coach of the Washington Spirit, reigning NWSL champions. Like, man, life moves fast.
I was just thinking I was like, God, I feel like we were just talking to her on here, like with A3, like talking like about her joining up with the Spirit, like going from a former player to retirement to like becoming, someone on a coach on the coaching staff. And it's just like, here we are, like in August, just months and months later, and having a different conversation about that as well. Some other news in the women's soccer world that we want to touch on before we get into making our picks across NWSL weekend. Alexia Putellas winning once more UEFA Women's Player of the Year, going back to back in this one. Congratulations are in order for her, for the FC Barcelona player and Spanish international. I just, I think about like when the news came out for the Euros and how she was going to have to sit that one out due to, lower leg injury, and how much of maybe a downer that was to sort of have for this team as they were getting ready to go into this like very historic tournament. And just the Euros this summer were just like so much fun to watch. And you look at that Spanish side that has a lot of Barcelona players, representing on the roster, but to not have Hermoso, and then to have the news that you're not going to have a Putellas, could have made this team, really, really dejected. But they had a very good Euros. They unfortunately were unable to make it all the way, but they were very competitive throughout it, and that's what you always want to see at the highest levels of soccer. And I think it's a very special player that we're watching here in Alexia Putellas. So 2 for 2 for her. So congratulations on her.
I mean, truly huge. I think, yeah, the tearing of the ACL was a bit devastating, but this I don't know, it makes me very happy for her. She should be very proud. She led Barcelona to the Champions League's final last summer, 18 goals, 15 assists in La Liga. Just such an incredible, talented player. And although a bit of a setback with this injury, she'll be back. No worries, everyone. Oh, yeah. She'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back and oohing and ahhing at her performances once more. The awards keep rolling out. Quite frankly, Women's Coach of the Year is going to Serena Wigman, coach of the England women's national team. I think maybe the writing was on the wall with that, with sort of coming in with the timeline that she was given, the expectations, quite frankly, that have been placed upon the Lionesses after really the last cycle or so, and then being able to go in and have this team go on an absolutely extraordinary historic run, I think was a big deal. And I think you had a lot of folks voting for her, whether it was on the media side of things or on, the coaching and player side of things. And that's always the curious part of folks' reactions to maybe some of the winners in this one. It's like, how is the voting broken down? And it's actually, a mix of players, coaches, and media. So that's always a fun thing to sort of take a look at. But congratulations to both Wigman and Putellas, the winners of their respective awards. Some U.S. soccer news a little bit as well here, Lisa. A board meeting took place.
Yes, there was a board meeting today. Lots of news coming out of U.S. soccer. Shout out to the U.S. men's national team. Their roster for the World Cup will be announced early November as they play England on Black Friday. I mean, I've got it on my calendar. I know this is a women's soccer show, but we got to talk about that because
have some holiday leftovers and
some Black Friday shopping in between your matches, your World Cup matches. Yes, but they're moving the U.S. soccer offices around Chicago to different locations. Just a lot of random news coming out of that. Also, that their next U.S. soccer board meeting will be in San Diego. So it's always good to just keep our finger on that U.S. soccer pulse as it keeps beating away.
Yep. Excited to sort of see if anything else comes out from the U.S. men's side. I know that whenever the word roster starts coming around, it sort of puts us in a little bit of a different mindset. Who's going to be on it? Who's going to be left off? And we're here to chat about, the women's national team, of course, but all that stuff is always exciting to see the reactions to those when it eventually
so exciting.
does drop.
And we gotta plug our family here at CBS Sports. If you're into the U.S. men's national team, you want to know everything about it, you got to listen to and watch In Soccer We Trust, our men's soccer show. It's led by Jimmy Conrad, Heath Pierce. They do just fantastic stuff. Charlie Davies. It's a great podcast, great live YouTube. Go check it out. In Soccer We Trust. They do an incredible job, all former players that talk about the game, and they'll give you a roster breakdown for the U.S. men's national team. Now they'll give their predictions. Come early November, they'll give their reactions. So go give them a follow so you stay up to date on that.
Yeah, shout out to the homies. I'll be watching when that drops. So I appreciate U.S. Soccer and the board meeting giving an actual date about when we can actually take a look and tune in for that. We're going to hop back into the NWSL action right after a quick break. Lisa and I are going to make some picks ahead of the NWSL matches taking place this weekend.
Starfleet, get your Starfleet. Preparing for Warp 10 excitement.
Yeah! This is an unauthorized launch. It is the greatest adventure of your life.
These broken rocks are reading our nightmares, but I don't like my nightmares.
Behold!
So magical.
Whatever happens,
we're in this together.
Woo!
All right. Let's talk about NWSL weekend action. We've got some previews to go through. We've got some picks to make. We've got some more news to talk about, but we want to weave it into some of these previews. So let's start with Orlando Pride versus OL Reign. Lisa, we've got Another team returning to regular season action, similar to Portland. OL Reign are current Women's Cup champions, defeating Racing Louisville in the Women's Cup tournament that took place last weekend. And now they are going to face a pretty hot Orlando Pride team, extending their undefeated streak to 7. Who are you picking in this one?
Yes, this is the first time Orlando Pride and OL Reign are playing each other in this regular season. And for Orlando, they're 7 games undefeated right now under Seb Hines, who has just really done a fantastic job with this team. They're so fun to watch Orlando play right now. And we saw the last loss that Orlando faced was against a Portland side that was very good and a very tough team. And now we've seen this Orlando team really turn things around with the personnel that they have. We're seeing a lot of youth under Seb Hines getting a lot of minutes, and he's really proud of what they've been able to do. But on the other side, OL Reign, as you mentioned, coming off the Women's Cup championship, this is a team that wants to win the Shield. They want to be number 1 in the standings. This is an OL Reign side that wants to do everything in their power to keep grinding away and be an incredible team this season. And they have the firepower to do that. That's some of the most fun thing to look at, because OL Reign is coming off of a 4-1 domination in regular season play over Gotham FC. So between these two sides, it's going to be in Orlando at Exploria Stadium. I see this one being a huge battle. I don't think Orlando is going to make it easy for OL Reign at all, and vice versa. We look at the goalkeeper battle between these two with Fallon Tullis-Joyce and Erin McLeod, 2 incredible goalkeepers that have played every minute for their clubs, respectively, this season. They've got a lot on the line, a lot of pressure on both of them. I see it as a narrow OL Reign win, though. Very, very narrow, like 1-0 in this one. I just think it's going to come down to the midfield between these two sides. A very experienced OL Reign midfield and a very young Orlando Pride midfield to see what they can do with Viviana Villacorta, who's just been tremendous for Orlando. But I mean, look at what OL Reign has. They've got Megan Rapinoe up top. They've got Rose Lavelle. They've got Jess Fishlock. They've got Quinn. It's going to be in the midfield for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm with you 100%. I love what we've been watching out of this, this iteration. Seb Hines, Orlando Pride, what we've been seeing from them. And the thing about streaks in this league is they ultimately come to an end. And I am curious if this is going to be the game in which that happens. You do have an OL Reign side that's returning to NWSL action, but it's not like they took weeks off or anything like that. They were active in the Women's Cup. They won. If anything, they might be coming back into NWSL action a bit stronger because a lot of their bench, many of their depth players saw a lot of time over the course of the 2 matches that took place in the Women's Cup. And if anything, that's something that you want for your team as you prepare to sort of make this trek down the final third of the season and then sort of go through this playoff push. And I'm with you. My eyes are all on the midfield and the middle third for this team. And I look at what's available for that defensive line in Orlando Pride, and I take a look at somebody like, I don't know, Rose Lavelle, who exists, and for OL Reign. And I think looking at a player like Quinn, especially someone who's able to go ahead and kind of set tempo and dictate things a little bit, is gonna make it a difficult day for Orlando Pride. But on the other side of that, even though I'm going with OL Reign in this one, I'm really looking forward to seeing Allie Watt get some time against her old team. I think these types of games are always, exciting, and they bring a level of excitement for neutrals to sort of watch and see. So I'm going to go with OL Reign, but I wouldn't mind at least seeing an Allie Watt goal in this one. And we'll have to come back and see if we're correct.
And that's not a stretch. She subs on for Orlando in the last match against Gotham and knocks a goal. So great trade by Orlando.
Yep.
The battle and the energy between Watt and this Reign side are going to be there.
I'm going to say that it's going to be maybe even like a narrow one, maybe like a 2-1, even putting a scoreline on it. Look, this OL Reign side we've seen them attack in waves and waves and waves and deliver crosses and deliver shots and building up those stats. And some of these scorelines end up 1-0, despite that. But I have to imagine that at this point in the season, as you're sort of finalizing things and sort of having, things like cohesion kind of come settle into place. I would imagine that maybe this is a game in which they give that back line a bit of a headache. So we'll see. We'll see if we're both correct. And this one is when we do the recap. Let's chat a little bit about Racing Louisville FC versus Chicago Red Stars. Chicago Red Stars trying to hang on to this sixth place. Have gone 2 weeks now with back-to-back losses. Haven't necessarily dropped out over the last 2 weeks of that upper half of the table, that they have not really been able to do themselves any favors in terms of providing themselves any cushion within that spot. It's a very, very tight table in the standings right now. And you've got a Racing side coming off of the Women's Cup. Listen, we saw Wang Xuan go ahead and get open up her goal scoring account with Racing. Natia Heidemann getting on the board. Again, another team that it's not like they took some time off over this course of last weekend. But I'm curious as to who's going to come out on top of this one, Lisa, because we've got two teams in very different positions than they were in the first half of this year. We're talking Challenge Cup and even in the earlier match between these two teams. Now, near the end of August, with teams in the midst of a playoff push, I'm curious if this one has the makings of a draw, but I don't know if I'm going that way.
Okay, so you're just dangling the carrot in front of us. If it's a draw or not. I'm not going to draw. I have Racing Louisville winning this one. It's the first match on Saturday. Orlando Rain is the only match on Friday, and this one kicks off 3 matches in a row for Saturday evening, 7:30 Eastern, and it's the second time these two teams have played. And as you just mentioned, both Chicago and Louisville in incredibly different spots right now than they were even 2 weeks ago when you look at this. So 2-1, Chicago won the last time, but now they're playing Louisville is playing at home at Lynn Family Stadium. Racing Louisville is 3 games undefeated. Meanwhile, Chicago, they've hit a bit of a skid. They're coming off 2 back-to-back losses. They've lost 4 of their last 5 and dropped 3 points in all of those. And that's just not great. They're struggling right now, Chicago. And I see where you're coming up with a draw in this one because Chicago's the team that can turn it on, and they've got a midfield that can do incredible things. Listener and goal. They have a lot of the great pieces. But when I look at Racing Louisville and what they've been able to do, as you just mentioned, Wang Xuan, Jess McDonald, Natia Heidemann, Savannah DeMello, Gemma Bonner in the back line, like Katie Lund, literally the list goes on. I'm just rattling off the roster, it feels like, at this point. But the talent that Racing Louisville has and what they've been able to do together has been truly phenomenal. This is a team that works so well together, moving the ball, moving off the ball, going quickly on transition, sending crosses in, offset pieces. They can punish teams in a variety of ways, and that's why I'm going to stick with Racing Louisville. Did I convince you to pick a winner, or are you sticking with your draw?
No, I just think there's too much familiarity here. I just really think that the form of both of these two teams right now doesn't really sway me one way or the other, quite frankly. I really do see Racing Louisville just unfortunately kind of stuck in a pattern right now, one that they're kind of unable to get out. I think they've got a little bit of an eye on 2023. I don't know if you bring in a player like Xuan and anticipate, okay, yes, this is the answer. We're going to go on this incredible, groundbreaking, historic run and push to the playoffs. I think maybe there's a little bit of an eye on 2023 and trying to make sure you kind of close out your season with a bit of momentum, which they have done. I mean, and if you're sort of a lower bottom half table team and you're still going out there and you're playing competitively and you're going out there and you're competing against other teams that might be playing with a different sense of urgency, I don't think that's anything to sort of turn your nose down at. I think that the fact that you've got players that look like they are, excited to play with each other and for each other, I think bodes well for them down the line, especially when they've got the mix of veteran players and kind of young core that they have right now. So I'm excited to see the continued development of somebody like a Jalen Howe, somebody like a Savannah DeMello. But on the other side for Chicago, they're like very thin at their roster. The transfer window has come and gone, and Chicago has, quite frankly, not made any indication that they are going to be adding anything to their team, which is unfortunate because they are coming off of a game where they might be without somebody like a Tatum Milazzo. We're recording this before an availability report has dropped, so there's some unknowns there about where her health is at. There's some unknowns there about Aaron Wright, who was out with their previous game due to an ankle injury. I don't know. Does somebody come back from an ankle injury in 1 week? We'll find out when the availability report drops, but they are incredibly thin in their defensive back position right now. And if all signs are pointing to pushing somebody back like a Bianca St. George's, I think you're losing something in your attack. If you're the Chicago Red Stars, quite frankly, she's been very, very good for them at wing back there. So I would imagine that I'm sticking for a draw in this one, but I hope we at least get some goals. I hope it's not going to be a 0-0 or maybe at least we get a 1-1. So we'll see. You're going racing. I'm going Chicago. Let's chat a little bit about Houston Dash, Washington Spirit. Some news before we really dive into this one. We've already discussed some updates with the dismissal of Kris Ward. It's going to be the first game that they, go ahead on the road without their head coach. Emily Sonnet was recently placed on season-ending injury list with a foot injury. So there are some adjustments that they made ahead of this one, Lisa.
Yeah, this is pretty big news. We knew the injury was maybe a little bit more serious than has been let on, because Emily Sonnet was left off the USWNT roster that came out earlier this week. But the Washington Spirit has signed Marissa Shiva and Audrey Harding to full-time contracts through the end of the season. They were both national team replacement players that saw significant time during the CONCACAF W Championship when the Spirit were missing like 7 or 8 players. So 2 players that came in, and Shiva and Harding, that definitely made a difference, made an impact, and now they get a contract for the end of the year. So perhaps we'll see them this weekend. Kelly O'Hara also dealing with a bit of an injury at some point. So we saw her actually being taken off the USWNT roster after she was named to it. A bit of change happening there as Kansas City defender Haley Mace was put back on the USWNT roster, a player that has not been on the U.S. senior national team for a while now, working her way back in. So that's another little bit of news that surrounds Washington with Kelly O'Hara and Emily Sonnet, but in Kansas City a little bit with Haley Mace.
I know. I mean, I don't know. I think in this one, Lisa, when you're looking at the Dash with the Spirit, I know the Dash are coming off of a week that saw them kind of rise and fall a little bit in the standings, but still, quite frankly, keeping pace for that shield and gunning first place potentially. I think when you're looking at these two, after having a little bit of time to kind of regroup and all things considered on the Spirit side of things, I don't know if this Spirit team strikes lightning twice. Quite frankly, we saw this franchise go through a pretty rocky 2021 season. Saw a lot of negative headlines around the franchise and the front office and ownership specifically. And the team just sort of rallied amongst one another and went on that incredible run. I don't know if they do that again in this year, and I don't really know, quite frankly, if they've got enough time to do that. They're one of the teams that have fewer games remaining on their schedules. So I'm excited to see Angela Salem get the chance to lead this team into a match against Houston Dash. But again, I just don't know if that's enough. I think if anything, Houston Dash perhaps are looking at this one and saying, let's try to bounce back, after dropping, after a missed opportunity. Perhaps they could have, gotten that win over San Diego and created some of that cushion, whether it was even amongst, perhaps some of the tiebreakers where, things could shake down to. So I'm going with the Dash in this one. I want to see them, pick up the win against Washington Spirit. How about you?
I like that you're picking Houston in this one. I think I don't know. I'm like debating right now between a draw and a Houston win.
I was like, this one could be a draw.
I'm putting all my cards on the table as I say this one. I mean, everything you just said about Houston rings true. They're coming off of that 3-1 loss to San Diego where they probably could have won this one. They are a team that can score goals, and we've seen that. There's 15 goals for Houston in their last 6 games. So when they score, they do it in a abundance of ways. And you look at someone like Ebony Salmon that has just been fantastic. She just got a call up to the English national team, which is huge for her. So that makes me think she'll have an extra little spark under her, knowing that she got the call up and now everyone knows it because it's been made public. And then on the Washington side, it's the first game for them without Kris Ward. Angela Salem will most likely be leading the team. Does that change anything for this Washington side? Perhaps, honestly, perhaps it does. But then they're playing without Emily Sonnet. They're playing without Kelly O'Hara. Those are two big-time veteran players on this squad that can help turn things around and help get things going. And I just think it's a little bit too late for Washington Spirit. I don't want to go with the draw in this one. I like to only pick one draw, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to go with Houston. I'll double up with you on this one. I think Ebony Salmon will bounce back. This team defensively will bounce back with Naughton, Prysock, Campbell. They'll tighten up against this Washington side that moves quick in transition, but Houston, they'll be ready for it because they just saw it against San Diego, how teams can be quick, put the pressure on, go in transition, look to be a little bit more direct, which is what Washington might try to do. And Houston will be ready for it this time.
I'm here with you. We're both going Houston. Let's talk a little bit about Portland Thorns versus San Diego Wave. We got a battle between the first place team and the second place team in the standings. 3 teams level with 28 points right now in the standings. This one might have some real indications down the stretch. When you're looking at these two teams matching up against each other, they're the last match to take place on Saturday. There's going to be a little bit of NWSL after dark action. Who are you picking in this one, Lisa?
It is NWSL after dark for sure. The last time Portland and San Diego played, it was a 2-2 draw. We saw in that match Taylor Korniak for the Wave. She got a brace. And Portland's coming off a midweek game in which they just lost to North Carolina. But they sat some players. Reen Wilkinson had a bit of rotation. Sophia Smith and Becky Sauerbrunn playing about 60 minutes. No Sam Coffey, no Christine Sinclair, no Bella Bigsby. So those players will be fresh for this match. Meanwhile, San Diego Wave, they have Jaden Shaw back after she was away with the U.S. youth team. They're coming off a big 3-1 win over Houston. This match between these two sides, like this is the one that I'm like, I just don't know about this team. I love it though. It'll be in Portland, in Providence. Honestly, my gut is saying San Diego. I think they're going to get back on the winning side of it, but I'm going to go with Portland because it's at home. They're coming off of a midweek loss that they're probably pissed about over North Carolina. They want to stay at the top of the standings, and they've got to get back on the winning side of things. They just broke their streak of win games or undefeated games, and they want to get on the other side of it, close this season out, staying at number 1. So I'm sticking with Portland. I'm going with it.
You know what? I hate to do it, but I'm feeling Portland in this one as well. I know San Diego is coming off of a really big win, right? You're talking about a 3-team race right now, really a 4 to 5 team race for the Shield, but you've got 3 teams who are level on points right now. And you've got San Diego coming out on top against that Houston Dash side. But, this was a win that sort of came off of some inconsistent results, right? Coming off of 2 back-to-back losses prior to that win, a draw sprinkled within their last 4 or 5 games. So I think that result was a big one for them. But I think there's something about this Portland Thorn side that's going to present some different challenges for them. I loved the first iteration of Sophia Smith versus Naomi Girma. I'm very excited to see it again in this one. And I'm hopeful that we do get some goals, that we do get some exciting soccer. But I do wonder if something like the midweek game will come back and bite Portland in this one, if the long travel from East Coast to West Coast will come back and bite them. But I do think that we could see Sophia Smith have another really strong game. I felt like she just was, inches or millimeters from potentially getting a goal in that game against the Courage. This was the other game for me that I was struggling. I was like, well, maybe I'll choose this one as my draw. But I think Portland has shown that they can do well in terms of their player rotation, that they've got players to step up when they need them to step up. And they're no strangers to having to, pick up results coming off of midweek matches. So I'm going to go with the Thorns in this one as well. I think that they're going to be hungry for this game in particular. So we'll see. We're both correct in that one. Let's chat a little bit about the doubleheader that's going to take place on Sunday. Got New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC versus Angel City FC. Gotham looking for a win. They have been winless for their last 7 games. And you've got Angel City that have still yet to make the leap into that upper half of the table, despite picking up some results. So they've got 2 draws and a win in their last 3 matches. I have to imagine, Lisa, that they're looking at this one and saying, okay, we have got to take care of business here. But I don't know if it's going to be so easy for this Angel City side. Who do you got in this one?
I have Angel City winning this one. They're traveling to Red Bull Arena, so it's a home match for Gotham. It's the second meeting between these two sides, and Gotham beat Angel City the first time, 1-0. It was a goal from Ifeoma, and that was it. I think we've seen an evolution and a turn of page from Angel City, where they want to push to be in that top playoff spot, which is something that is doable for this Angel City side, but it starts this weekend getting 3 points against Gotham. Gotham haven't won in 6 games. They're on a downward tick, coming off of a 2-1 loss to Orlando. They got a goal in that match, which is good, but it's not good enough, right? And against an Angel City side, that may be enough to just get one, because we've seen Angel City fall to a lot of draws that way. But ultimately, I think that Los Angeles, the city of angels, and Angel City, they're going to pull through on this one and ultimately get the win on the East Coast, and come up big with 3 points at the end of this one.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, Hugh Menzies has been tasked with being the interim head coach and trying to perhaps, at the very least, just sort of navigate this team through the remainder of their season. Gotham has a number of games under remaining in their regular season, but I don't know if there's enough here for them to go on some ridiculous run. They've made a couple of moves to sort of close out this international window. We talked about them picking up Victoria Pickett from Kansas City Current. They went ahead and they also signed an additional defender, Brazilian international Bruinha. So I'm curious as to how they see these players fitting in to the current roster, to the current team, to the current formation, and what they're trying to present with the remainder of games they have left in this season. I would love to see a really good, strong, competitive match against Gotham. Perhaps the injection of new players can help do that. But this was, again, another one of those games where I'm like, is this the one that I want to give my draw to? We saw a very narrow win from Gotham over Angel City, but that was at a much different time and in a much different place of the season. I think you got an Angel City side that is hungry and thirsty to sort of break back in, quite frankly, into that upper half of the table and try to continue their playoff push. So I'm going to go with Angel City in this one, but right. I don't imagine that it's going to be this high goal scoring affair. I think it might be narrow. I think we might get a 1-0 or maybe even a 2-1, because something else that we've seen from Angel City is they've been conceding constantly very late in games. So we'll see if they can hang on to a 1-0 or a 2-1. I'm going Angel City in this one.
I don't know if I see a 2-0. There's something about Gotham. They get goals.
Oh, no. I said 1-0 or 2-1.
Okay, well, 1-0. There you go.
Yeah. Well, Angel City has been, they've been conceding late, and Gotham has been scoring late. Yeah. So there's the makings of that, so that's what that's what also made me go a little bit back and forth as if I wanted to give an actual result or a draw. So I'm going to go Angel City, narrow scoreline. Let's talk about this last one, Lisa. It's Kansas City Current versus North Carolina Courage. Quick turnaround if you're the North Carolina team in this one, and Kansas City Current, the hosts, trying to build on their undefeated streak as well. Again, we chatted a little bit about Haley Mace getting called into the national team as a replacement for Kelly O'Hara. So this is a very exciting time, I think, for this KC Current team. It looks like they're having a lot of fun, quite frankly, as they're continuing their playoff push. And I don't know. I think maybe if we were previewing a game like this one, Lisa, couple weeks ago, maybe we'd feel differently.
Yeah.
But North Carolina Courage finally built themselves a little streak, 2 wins, and we've got Kansas City Current, who had to come from behind on a penalty to go ahead and get a draw against Angel City. Who do you got in this one?
I have a draw between these two
you saved
sides.
it for this one.
I
Okay.
saved my draw for this match between Kansas City and North Carolina because this 11-game undefeated streak for Kansas City, it's not going to end now. It's just not. They're a team that is too hot. They're playing with confidence. They're having so much fun doing it. But this game at home, they're going up against a North Carolina team that's coming off midweek action. That 3-1 win over Portland from being at home for North Carolina gave them a lot of confidence coming into it. And we have to remember the last time these two sides played, because it was 4-3. It was a back and forth match with 7 different goal scorers in this one. North Carolina goes up. Kansas City equalizes. Then Dabinia gets one for North Carolina. Then Lola Bonta equalizes before half. Then North Carolina, and then Kansas City immediately responds. It was so back and forth. It was so exciting. I think we're going to see that much excitement again in this one. But the last time Kansas City closed out with 2 back-to-back at the end of that match to take the win. And I think it'll just end in a draw between these two sides. And they'll split points to end the weekend of NWSL matches.
Yeah, I hear you. I listen. This was there were a ton of games this weekend where I was like, "There's a few of these that I think could be pegged for a draw," and I thought that the previous match between these two teams was headed toward a draw then, but it turns out it was just a wild goal scoring affair with 7 goals between them. But I think Kansas City Current is going to be a little bit motivated by that, quite frankly. I think they're going to want to finish strong. I think we heard from Lola Bonta in that post game against Angel City specifically, that they were not happy with their last couple performances, that they didn't want to concede, as many goals as they did against North Carolina Courage, and then having to come from behind against this Angel City side by way of penalty kicks. So I think that this is going to be a game where we still get to continue to see some of the really exciting attack that we've seen from Kansas City Current, but perhaps an opportunity to sort of flex their defensive muscles as well. And I think they're going to try to pull off the win in this one. And I think that the midweek action might come back and bite the Courage in this one as well. So I'm going to actually go with the result, and I'm going to go with Kansas City Current in this one, especially because there are those unknowns against somebody like a Diana Ordonez. If she's available, I think, hey, you're probably on par for your draw. But if she's not available, I think it's going to be a long day at the office on the pitch. But we'll see. We'll be back to recap all of these games and see how our picks shook out in this one. Thanks everybody for joining us and for listening to Attacking Third. Thanks everybody who has voted for us in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. Check your emails if you've been selected to vote for us in the final round. A quick programming note: Lisa and I are going to be back on Monday morning to recap the weekend's games, and we'll go live for you. So Lisa's going to be on the road traveling and calling these games, so we need a little bit of cushion to make sure she gets back home safely and joining us to talk about the game. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube to know when we go live, and we'll be back to recap all the matches. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.